Revelation chapter 17, we have introduced to us a new image that's on top of a very similar image. It's going to be the image of the prostitute, the harlot, on top of the beast, riding the beast. And the imagery here is of something that we're going to see in the Old Testament prophets has a familiar ring to it. This is something that we've seen before when it comes to God speaking to His people or speaking of other nations. We're going to read through verses 1 through 6. Revelation 17 and verse 1. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked with me, saying, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Verse 4, The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and of the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. Okay, now we have an additional image being shown to us in this symbolism, this vision of a woman. And this woman is a great harlot, verse 1 tells us. This is a prostitute. This would be someone of ill repute, so to speak. And this is someone who carries with it the concept of immorality. When you think of the word harlot, which is one of the oldest wicked professions on earth, it is something that conjures up the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, greed, all kinds of immorality, self-indulgence, extravagant, unrestrained lifestyle. All of this are depicted in the woman here who is a harlot. And the kings of the earth committed fornication with her. Of course, this is using this spiritually speaking. And the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So she has the kings of the earth, the nations, under her spell. And verse 3 says that John was carried away into the wilderness, and she saw this woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, what is this beast we've already been introduced to? Rome, the Roman Empire. We're first introduced to the beast in Revelation chapter 13. That may not be the first introduction. That's where he's described in detail, in great detail, Revelation chapter 13. There may be a prior introduction to as far as the word beast in reference to the Roman Empire earlier in the book. But this is the beast, this is the Roman Empire. So we're getting a picture here, okay, this woman is sitting upon this beast and riding this beast. And so we have a description of the beast. We know that this has to do with the Roman Empire because of the previous chapters and the previous imagery. Verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. This would be the colors of luxury, of richness. Purple was a very expensive dye to make. Lydia in Acts 17 was a seller of purple. That meant she was a wealthy woman. She was a wealthy businesswoman. It was very difficult to get purple. as a dye for your garments or for some sort of clothing. It had to do with, in the Mediterranean, there was a small sea creature that had to be crushed, and it released a dye. And then there was a long process to get the cloth dyed. And so if someone had purple, they were royalty, which meant they were rich, or they were rich. And so Lydia was evidently a wealthy businesswoman who became a Christian in Acts chapter 16. She was a seller of purple. So purple there, the color purple, is a color of richness, extravagance, and also of scarlet. Scarlet is a color that is associated with what in the Old Testament? Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Isaiah 1 in verse 18. Your sins are as scarlet. They're deeply dyed. They'll be as white as snow, God says, when I forgive you. So scarlet represents sin and wickedness. She was adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup. So again, emphasizing this is a rich person in the imagery. Having in her hand a golden cup full of the abomination of filthiness of her fornication. So again, the concept of a cup full of wickedness, ungodliness. This is the image that you find throughout the Old Testament, the cup of wickedness. The concept of that cup being full of just filth and immorality and uncleanness. And on her forehead was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. So here's her identity on her forehead in this imagery. She's identified with Babylon the Great. Now, Babylon in the book of Revelation represents what city? Rome. It was a code word for Rome in the language and the symbolism of the book of Revelation. So she is associated with Rome as an entity. And verse 6 says, I saw the woman, she was drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And he says, when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. So John is seeing this. She's intoxicated with the blood of the saints. So she is involved in the death. She's got bloodlust for the saints, for the Christians, the martyrs of Jesus. This is someone who is willing to die for Christ. Dying for the cause of Christ is a martyr. And the way the word martyr is used today is not the way the Bible uses the word martyr. When a suicide bomber in Islam is held up as a martyr, that's never the way the Bible uses the word martyr. Martyr was someone who was willing to die for the cause of Christ, not kill themselves and whomever else is around them. That's not a martyr. That's a murderer. But a martyr is someone saying, I'm willing to die for Jesus Christ, and is executed. So she is drunk, intoxicated with their blood. She has bloodlust for killing the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. Now, there are two basic interpretations of this woman. We know what the beast is. We know what the beast is. The beast is Rome, Roman Empire. But now we have a woman on top of the beast, riding the beast. And some have had an interpretation of her as referring to the apostate church that was built on the foundation of the Roman Empire. And so they see this woman as God's people unfaithful in what culminated in Roman Catholicism. It was founded in Rome. It became a merger as a result of the merger of Roman pagan activity with the church falling away between 300 and 600 AD. That merged together, and the hybrid that resulted was the Roman Catholic Church, both in organization and in many doctrines and practices. So some brethren, Wayne Jackson is one, and there's others, see this woman as referring to Roman Catholicism. And here's the reasons why. I'm going to give you this and the reasons why for this interpretation first, and then give you the second interpretation of this woman in just a moment. Here's the reason why. Out of the ashes, and this is historically correct, out of the ashes and the fall of the Roman Empire, what came up? The Roman Catholic Church. I mean, you cannot deny that at all. History bears that out. So her sitting on the beast shows she has come up from the beast, that she's the foundation. The foundation is the Roman Empire, and here's the Roman Catholic Church that is on top of that foundation, so to speak. Also, if you look at verse 3, John was carried away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and he saw this woman. Now, what happened to the church in Revelation chapter 12? Revelation 12 and verse 14, speaking of the woman as the church, look at verse 14. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place. There she was nourished for a time and half times from the presence of the serpent. And verse 16 says of that same chapter, the earth helped the woman. It is believed that this phrase, the earth helped the woman, means that when Rome stopped persecuting the woman, the church, that opened the door for apostasy, for compromise, and for the church to merge with the Roman Empire and result in Roman Catholicism. The point is of the woman being in the wilderness. Where is the church in that imagery in Revelation 12? She's in the wilderness. Where was John taken in the Spirit to see this woman? In the wilderness. So I'm giving you the reasons why Wayne Jackson and others believe that this is referring to the apostate church or Roman Catholicism. Another thing is all the corruption that is found within this institution, wickedness, ungodliness that's found within Roman Catholicism. That would go along with the golden cup full of abomination. Also, the richness of Roman Catholicism. That denomination is a very wealthy entity. It may not be as wealthy now as it used to be in years past, but it controlled a great deal of wealth throughout history. So again, the wealth aspect of Roman Catholicism leads some to believe that this woman is referring to the Roman Church. Also, the fact that the word mystery is used in verse 5. Mystery is something you find all throughout Roman Catholicism in their teaching. They talk about the mystery of the sacraments, the mystery of the Virgin Mary, that's a word found all throughout their teachings. Another thing that is used in this interpretation to indicate this may refer to the Roman Church is she is the mother of harlots. What came out of Roman Catholicism? Denominations, right? Protestant denominations gave birth or came out of the Roman Catholic Church. Martin Luther, who was a big Protestant reformer, was a Catholic priest, and he revolted against it, and that's how Lutheranism started, the Lutheran Church. And so they say the mother of harlots. She is a mother that gives birth to other religious organizations that are not true. Plus, verse 6, the Roman Catholic Church was very much throughout history instrumental in putting people to death that disagreed with them. The Spanish Inquisition, burning people at the stake. If you had a possession of the Bible, that was a very dangerous thing back then. If the Catholic authorities caught you with a copy of the Bible, that meant death for you and your family. So they shed much blood. So the concept of her being drunk with the blood of the saints, not only did the Roman Empire persecute the saints, the Roman Catholic Church did as well. So these are the factors that are all put together in Wayne Jackson and others thinking that this could be referring to the Roman Catholic Church. There are no doubt there are some similarities, and the root beginnings of it is found in Rome. There's no doubt about that historically. But other brethren have interpreted this as just further indication of the debauchery and the wickedness within the Roman Empire, referring to this woman as a symbolism of the nation of Rome and how wicked she is. And this goes along with a lot of what you find in the Old Testament, where other nations are referred to as a harlot. Wicked nations that become wicked, full of debauchery, full of idolatry, they're referred to as a harlot in the Old Testament prophets. Look at Nahum chapter 3 in the Old Testament. Nahum chapter 3. This is speaking of the nation and the city of Nineveh. Chapter 3, verse 1 and verse 4, she is described as well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft. And it notes the multitude of her harlotries in verse 4. Nahum 3, verse 1 and verse 4. So here, Nineveh is described as a harlot. Then Isaiah chapter 23. Isaiah chapter 23. The nation of Tyre. Isaiah chapter 23, verses 15 through 17. Tyre, the nation of Tyre, play the harlot with all the kingdoms of the world. Isaiah 23, 15 through 17 talks about. She was a great harlot of commerce because she was on the coast. Tyre was on the coast, and there was a lot of commerce that went through Tyre. Isaiah 47. Babylon, the actual literal city of Babylon, is described as a mistress of nations, cruel, enjoying wealth and prosperity. Isaiah 47, verses 5 through 15. And also, God's own people, the city of Jerusalem, was noted as a harlot. Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 21. How is the faithful city become a harlot? Isaiah 1 and verse 21. Also, Jeremiah 2 and verse 20. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Hosea. You can't forget the book of Hosea. What is the book of Hosea about? God's unfaithful people, using the imagery of Gomer and Hosea marrying a prostitute. And then that prostitute goes after her lovers. He said, that's what my people have done as Israel. Micah talks about that as well. That the nation of Israel and Judah, they played the harlot. What do you find in Ezekiel chapter 16? The imagery of Israel growing up, God taking care of Israel. When Israel grew up and became of marrying age, God entered into a covenant with Israel. That would be the law of Moses at Mount Sinai. God blessed Israel. And then what did Israel do? Israel became a harlot. Started prostituting herself to the nations. So that imagery of a nation being a harlot is found throughout the Old Testament, even talking about His own people being a harlot. So what other brethren have found here in Revelation chapter 17 is not a prophecy about the Roman Catholic Church per se, but it's further imagery that describes the Roman Empire and her wickedness. using some of the same type of imagery that you find in the Old Testament, referring to a nation becoming a harlot, becoming wicked, and engaging in wickedness. And verses 1 through 6 very much fit within that context of what John is talking about. John is talking about things that would involve the Christians being persecuted under the Roman Empire. So, I'm no fan of the Roman Catholic Church, you know that. But I don't know that I could see that this is directly referring to the Roman Catholic Church, this harlot riding the beast. I think it's just further imagery depicting the debauchery and the wickedness of the Roman Empire. I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that there is something to be said in principle, in application of the Roman Catholic Church, because where did the Roman Catholic Church come from? It came from Rome. Much of their organization, much of their practices, much of their doctrines come from paganism. And they did some of the very same things that the Roman Empire did. Any questions or comments about that? Mm-hmm.
Like a couple chapters back, how they're saying, people will say that it was Hitler
Mm-hmm.
coming and what Hitler's doing in the apocalypse. It just seems that it's written to the church for them to understand that these things are going to happen. You are going to have these things.
Right.
It's not political. So
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's very far-fetched to say that this is referring to anything beyond the Roman Empire to whom he's directly writing about. To try to get it into another historical setting is problematic. Now we do know, I do believe very firmly, the 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 is referring to the rise of the papacy and the Catholic Church. There's just so much evidence there that it's referring to that I'm very firm in my belief of that. But to try to find it in the book of Revelation, I think you would be hard-pressed to do that, although there are some similarities. As you see, there are nations who had similar concepts of persecuting God's people. Literal Babylon, the Chaldeans, persecuted God's people, the Jews. Would put them to death if they didn't follow through. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You didn't bow to the image, you were going to be killed. Of course, God delivered them. Daniel being thrown into the lion's den. You didn't follow through with the king, you're going to be persecuted. Things like that. Well, there's common themes that are repeated. And the themes that you see repeated that are done here in the book of Revelation are definitely repeated throughout history with God's people under the persecution of the Roman Catholic Church. Or any entity that says you can't be a Christian, whether it's communism or even Islam today. It says you can't be a Christian. It's against our laws, our teachings. So there are principles that definitely apply, but the immediate context and the immediate application, I believe, is referring very much to the Roman Empire. Remember what was said at the very beginning, Revelation chapter 1, these things I'm writing to you must shortly come to pass. So this is going to come to pass pretty quickly in time. So we know things we know for a fact is that this beast is the Roman Empire. This woman is the personification of the wickedness of that nation, that empire. We know that this woman is a personification of persecution. She is drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. And so when John saw her, he marveled. John, being Jewish, would have known these Old Testament passages that refer to a harlot, a woman of wickedness, a nation of people, and how that they become like a harlot. He would have been very familiar with that language. Now look at verse 7. But the angel said to me, "Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was, is not, and yet is." A lot of mystery there. Now, those who believe that this is referring to the revival of the same spirit of persecution in the Roman Catholic Church say, okay, here's the demise of the Roman Empire. It is not, Roman Empire's fallen, and now there's the Roman Catholic Church. And they use these verses to say that is the revived Roman Empire in the Roman Catholic Church. Verse 9, "Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits." Verse 10, "There are also 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other have not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition." Verse 12, "The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, who have received no kingdom as of yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast." Now some believe that this is referring to the Roman emperors, the various Roman emperors that he's speaking of here, that were in the Roman Empire. Verse 13, "These are of one mind, and they will give power and authority to the beast." Verse 14, "These shall make war with the Lamb." Now, a lot of imagery there. We may not know exactly what is he talking about, what is the details there, but here's the big picture. We do know for sure. "These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful." Daniel chapter 7 says, this beast will make war with the saints and overcome them, but he will be judged by God and be destroyed. This is the big picture. Whatever this detail means, there might be a lot of head scratching, and a lot of commentaries, they either try to explain it or they kind of glance over these verses. And some of them believe that this may be the kings and the ones that are in authority here may be referring to the different emperors that persecuted the church. You had Nero, of course. He was the first emperor, Roman emperor, to persecute the church. And then you had Domitian, who is the emperor at the time John writes this. Then you go throughout history, you find various emperors who persecute the church. Some more severe than others, others not so much. Then you get down to the early 300s, Emperor Constantine puts an end to it. No more persecution of the Christians. Well, that was a good thing, but also a bad thing, because now he wanted favors from the church. Let's get all the bishops together. Let's make some theology. Let's get you can buy and sell now positions within the church. The church had already become pretty corrupt by the 300s. And when Constantine put an end to persecution and legalized it, he did a lot of good, but he also did a lot of bad. He made a lot of the pagan temples into church buildings. And also emphasized elaborate church buildings to attract people. He said it's not fair that the pagan deities, they have really nice buildings, really nice temples built to them. The Christians, they need really nice church buildings to attract people, to get people in the door. Does that not sound familiar today? How that brethren will go into debt, millions of dollars to spend on an edifice to get people in the door.
The Bible talks about where there isn't really a, I'm paraphrasing, but not a new sin.
Nothing new under the sun, right. But he started doing that, and as a result, these politically minded church members felt indebted to Constantine. And so Constantine made him feel good about things. So he started making policy for the church. Well, that developed a priesthood within the church. That developed all kinds of false doctrines. And from 300 to 600, over that 300 period of time, 300-year period of time, all kinds of things started happening that resulted in the development of the Roman Catholic Pope and the beginning of the papacy. So, all of that happened within history. You can read about that in history. But the one thing that's for sure, God's true people, verse 14, here's the big picture. Whoever makes war with the Lamb will lose. Anyone who goes up against Christ will be defeated. It may not be immediate. It might take 100, 200 years for it to happen. But it'll happen. They will lose. God's people might have to suffer. They might have to go through the valley of the shadow of death for a while. Psalm 23. Go through that valley of the shadow of death, but God is with us. Well, the church has to go through that difficulty, but they will be victorious because He is Lord of lords and King of kings. He is the ultimate ruler. And those who are with Him are the called, the chosen, and the faithful. That's a beautiful phrase to describe God's people. How are we called? Through the Word. I believe it's 2 Thessalonians 2:14, we're called by the gospel. I believe that's where it is. Called by the gospel of Jesus Christ, by the Word. It's how He calls us. Chosen. What does it mean for us to be chosen by God?
Well, many are called, a few are chosen. Those are the ones. Like we all have ability to, those that can read and comprehend and read the gospel, but the ones that don't are ones that obey.
Right. Chosen by God, chosen to do His will. Ephesians 1, verse 3 and 4. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 3 and 4. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in heavenly places in Christ, just as He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before Him in love. He predestined, verse 5, us as to the adoption as sons by Jesus Christ to Himself, according to the good pleasure of His will. That simply means God, before the world began, had this plan to have His kingdom, the church. And His invitation is to anyone. Anyone who believes and obeys can be in that church, can be in that kingdom. So God says, here's my chosen people. You can be a part of it if you choose to. So we're called by the gospel. If we obey, we're chosen and we're faithful. That means we are loyal to God. Called by the gospel, part of His chosen people, and the faithful. And so we have this as our means of victory. This is how we are going to overcome whatever makes war against us. Whether it be the Roman Empire, whether it be what we face in our society, we will be victorious because we follow the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. Now verses 15 through 18, then he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are the peoples, multitudes, and nations, and tongues. And so the waters there represent all these, the peoples, nations, languages, and tongues. The Roman Empire encompassed many people. The Mediterranean area, the other seas, the Black Sea, the Galilean Sea, and all the other seas that you find in Europe, the oceans, the lakes. The Roman Empire, the extent of its borders covered that. Verse 16, the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot and make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Well, that's interesting. You would think that there would be complete concord or unity between the beast and the harlot. But something's going to happen. Look at verse 17. God has put it into their hearts to fulfill His purpose and to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman who you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. So going back up to verse 16, the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot and make her desolate. So there's not unity between the harlot and the beast. Again, what does history tell us? Internal strife within the Roman Empire. Toward the end of the fall of the Roman Empire, they were constantly fighting civil wars. They were fighting among themselves. In fact, the empire split. There was East and West Empire for a while. So there was struggle. They turned on themselves. And that was part of the fall of the Roman Empire. You had external invasion, you had internal corruption, you had internal strife. All of those factors came together to bring about the fall of the Roman Empire. And notice who's orchestrating this fall: God. Verse 17, He's going to put it into their hearts to fulfill His purpose. That's God's providence. You see, God will use even the wickedness that a nation does to bring about its own demise. He'll turn it on them and bring about His own demise because they persecuted God's people. And therefore, what we see here is this woman. Now, chapter 18, which we don't have a lot of time to go into, is talking about the fall of it, the fall of Babylon. And it's going to talk about how the wicked people of the world will mourn at the fall of Babylon. And in fact, at the fall of the Roman Empire, enters into the time period known as the Dark Ages. A lot of the technology of the Roman Empire and such was lost during the Dark Ages. A lot of the ancient knowledge that we're just now finding out for ourselves that the ancient people knew, that was kind of lost when the Roman Empire fell. And so it entered into a period of the Dark Ages. For example, there is that concept of having aqueducts for your sewage and your things, to not have it out in the open to contaminate a city. That was common knowledge among the Romans. But you know, during the Dark Ages, what did they have? What happened in Europe that caused all the plagues? They would have open sewage ditches in their cities. You know, you do your business, you take your bucket, you throw it out the window out into the street. Well, anybody knows now that that's going to cause problems, diseases. Well, the Romans knew that, but that knowledge got lost. And during the Dark Ages, that's why there was a lot of plagues, a lot of problems in Europe due to unsanitary conditions. And so a lot of the things that we found out in the 1800s and 1900s and now the 21st century are things that the Romans and the ancient people knew all along, and we're just now figuring out how to do it. And it's not really anything new. It's just a revival of an ancient knowledge. So, where was I going with that? Anyway, the point is that the wicked people were mourning the fall of the Roman Empire. You find that in chapter 18. And Babylon's final fall is spoken of there. We have just a few minutes to go into the first part of chapter 18. After these things I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having a great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud cry, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. Verse 8, and all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. There was a lot of commerce done on the waters. The merchants of the earth were made wealthy as a result of water passageways and the road system that the Romans built. You heard the expression, all roads lead to Rome? They were very good road builders. In fact, over in some places in Europe, there's still roads that the Romans built 2,000 years ago that are still being used. They were good at what they did. They invented concrete. And they had a good system, very intelligent people. Verse 4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, unless you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached up to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Oh, there's a lesson right there. Come out from them. You don't be like the world around you, because God's going to bring His wrath down upon nations and this world ultimately. And if you're a part of the world, you're going to have to face His wrath. Come out from them. Come out from her, my people. Verse 4. We've got to be separate from the world. We're in the world, but we're not of the world. And that whole concept, this is the illustration I should have given in my sermon of a contamination. Even if you have to go into a contaminated area, you can have a suit on with your own oxygen tank, and you can be distinct from the contaminated area. When I worked at General Motors in security, we learned how to put on oxygen tanks and breathing apparatuses when we had to go into a place where the air was contaminated either by chemicals or by fire, by smoke. And we learned how to strap those things on, strap on our mask, turn on our oxygen. We had to do it within a certain time frame because, you might have to go in there and rescue somebody. Well, then you're in the midst of it, but you're not of it. See, we're in the world, but we're not of it. That distinction, we're holy, to be separate, to be distinct, come out from her. Doesn't mean you go build a monastery and build a wall and don't associate with people. That's not what that means. It means that as we're in and among the people, we're not of the people. We let our light so shine that men may see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven. They see a distinction in us than them. And that is going to attract people. When God's people live a distinct life in the world, they're going to say, you've got something genuine, and I want to be a part of it. Revelation chapter 18, we will go into it in more detail next week, Lord willing.